Alright, this is going to be probably my last video on, well, this is only my second video on the mind energy of Henri Bergson, which is this book. It's a very old book. I was looking in the little checkout card that used to be, this used to be how they would check things out, a little thing where they would stamp a little date that it's due, and this was checked out in May of 1954, which I thought that was pretty crazy. But so the reason I'm only going to be doing this is the reason this is going to be my last video on the mind energy is because I want to jump into the matter and memory of Henri Bergson, so that I can continue. And the middle stuff in this book, a bunch of lectures which are not things I would really want to discuss. I pretty much read the whole book today, so I'm pretty much going to be talking about the second chapter, or the second lecture, and then the last one in this book, which is going to be the second chapter, or the second lecture, is called Body and Soul, or it's actually called Soul and Body, but it's basically, going against the common equating or saying that for every mental event or mental thing that happens, or mental occurrence, there's a corresponding direct correspondence to a certain brain state or a brain activity. So I'm going to kind of pretty much be talking about the second chapter, so then I'll probably start, from this video I'll talk about Matter and Memory by him, and then after that I'll probably talk about creative evolution. The second chapter is a lecture that I believe was given in 1912. It was primarily he was accepted into this, or he became the chair of this Society of Psychological Research. Yeah, that's it. And it's basically talking about, it's like a philosophy of mind, which is about the body and the soul, of course, and then talking about the separation and the union between them. Each of us is a body. Descartes says that in a certain way. He says bodies can be sensed, and each of us, have a body and such. The functions of the brain are localized. So this is what I say. Even though he disagrees with the fact that given a certain mental event that there's a corresponding brain activity, he's still very psychologistic, which means that he's, appealing to us this certain thing that there are certain psychological explanations for things. There are. So he says that, there's, each part of our brain, there's a certain part in our brain which is the reason for why we can talk and walk and such. Every function that the brain has is localized. Perception is inside of body. So he gives this idea that perception is, localized also, and that is within the body. Furthermore, talks about free will a little bit here. Free will is consciousness, and it's consciousness producing and direct movement. So he says that he talks about the materialist hypothesis here. If I can go here, page 33. He says that the conscious soul he kind of equates the consciousness with the soul here. So the consciousness with respect to the body and the mind body problem, in various kinds of philosophies, the idea of consciousness is kind of, it kind of depends. The idea of consciousness is, not always equated with body. It's not always equated with mind either. Can we verify that the conscious soul is effect which perceives effects? So can we verify that? Can we verify that the consciousness is the soul? No. The belief in free will consists in this. To them, consciousness is superadded, a kind of phosphorescence. It is like the luminous trail to a match which we strike on the wall in the dark. This phosphorescence, being, as it were, a self-illumination, begets strange internal optical illusions. So consciousness imagines itself to be modifying, directing, and producing the movements, when in fact it is itself the result of them. So the conscious soul, the consciousness as the soul, is the effect. It's the modifying, directing, and producing the movements, when it is in fact the result of those things. So he says that that which gives itself presents itself to the senses is regarded as soul. No, it's regarded as real. So this is kind of the way we can compare phenomenology to Bergsonism. We can, because like he says here, that what presents itself to these senses is what is regarded as real, unless otherwise given or proven or stated. That is inherently phenomenological, even though this is something that that's the movement of phenomenology, and that at this point had not come to fruition by any means. So science is that which is proven by experiences. 75. When we consider a mechanism of voluntary movement, in particular, the functioning of the nervous system is in general, and in fact life itself is what is essential to it, we are led to the conclusion that the invariable contrivance of consciousness, from its most humble origin in elementary living forms, is to convert physical determinism to its own ends, or that rather to elude the law of conservation of energy while obtaining from matter of fabrication of explosives, even ever intenser and more utilizable. So, where we get science, what science is what is proven by experience. So in science, we use certain things to gain knowledge and to build up knowledge. So it's phenomenological in that Searle's philosophy of science is this as well. So the life of the mind is bound to the life of the body. So this is a inherent tenet of Bergson's philosophy, in that the life is bound to the body. The life is a force, a driving force, which is bound to this body, and it's like a thing that's some will say in a certain way, to put it bluntly, trying to escape that. We can I can't read my handwriting. How as cerebral data and other data related. Page 39. There's a point I'm getting to. I'm just scrambling with my notes here. So what we have here is, what if we were to look inside the mind and observe all of its activities? Let's say we had all the abilities to look inside, to break the mind open and look inside and at all of its activities. We would be able to observe everything. We would have the correct scientific apparatus. We would have all that stuff to be able to observe all of the brain activities there. Given a certain brain, would we be able to? So this is what Bergson calls cerebral activity. We would be able to observe all the cerebral activity that we want. So, what from that, given that scientific experiment, what would we know of the soul? Would we know anything about the soul through such a experiment? Furthermore, would we be able to, is really what he's saying, as to what we can know of the soul? Would we be able to, to make a direct link between such a brain state, or a cerebral activity, to a certain mental state, with a certain set of mental events or mental states? Bergson says no. The materialist hypothesis is going to say that, yeah, mind and that the body and the soul are the same. They're the same thing, and that we're essentially, some of them anyway, would argue that we are essentially mechanical, and that this factors into his free will thought. Given a state of mind X, one could one know here the corresponding cerebral activity? So the brain does not determine thought. So that's what in this chapter here, and in the later chapter, brain thought here, at the end here, that's what's talked about here. Does the brain determine thought? Bergson says no. The body of the natural world is stimulated appropriately, so we have things on the outside going on, and that has an effect on the body, and the soul or mind, and he kind of aligns that with a certain will, what he calls will. It has appropriate reaction with that. So there is appropriate reaction of cerebral activity given certain stimuli that acts upon the body. There is a corresponding cerebral activity from that. So can a certain mental state or soul state be corresponding to that or directed to that? Thought is directed toward action. Material, and can we think about thought as materialized? I'm going to read a passage to you from page 47 here, if I can find it. Orchestra of the mind. Okay. As the symphony overflows the movements which scan it. So the mental life overflows the cerebral life, but the brain, precisely because it extracts from the mental life whatever it has that may be played in movement, whatever is materializable, precisely because it constitutes thus the point of insertion of mind and matter, secures at every moment the adaptation of the mind to circumstances, continually keeping in mind in touch with realities. So the work of the brain is to the whole of conscious life what the movements of the conductor's baton are to the orchestra or to the orchestral symphony. So think about that, though. The whole orchestra, everything going on there. What is the guy doing? The guy with the baton. He's just keeping time. The work of the brain is to the whole of conscious life what the movements of the conductor's baton are to the orchestral symphony. So then he says, the mental life overflows cerebral life. The life of the mental life overflows what goes on in here materially. The brain just keeps one conscious. The brain is the thing that allows for attention. The brain is merely the thing that allows attention or things to be attended towards something. So like was said before, there are outer stimuli which act upon bodily life, which create a cerebral reaction. There is still a bunch. What he's saying here is there's still a bunch of mental or soul life, which overflows this. And furthermore, that the brain is what allows consciousness within matter, really. And he just basically argues against that the brain is that there's a direct link between brain or cerebral activity and the mental life. So nothing is more evidently real than consciousness. So that's kind of a little bit phenomenological too, because it's a bit of a go to page 55 here. It's a bit phenomenological because phenomenology also does that. For there is nothing more immediately given, nor more evidently real than consciousness, and mind is consciousness. Now, consciousness signifies before everything memory. So he kind of has this little correlation between memory and consciousness as well. So, next time I'm ever going to write a paper which is talking about the indubitability of consciousness, I will just discuss Bergson, definitely, totally, because it involves how what all of his thoughts here and in his other writing just really do lay a foundation for the thought that consciousness and mind and memory are indubitable. So the mind overflows the brain activity. The mental life is no effect of the bodily life. What was that? Page 59. Was there something I was going to say on page 59? On page 59, he kind of has a bit of a philosophy of science. I mean, Bergson, I think, has a whole philosophy of science, system of the philosophy of science in his works, which, is a bit of a social science thing, which is psychology, but, it's a method of science which is based upon experience. Um, the first method, because it aims at making us immediately certain, condemns to remain always in the simply probable, or rather in the purely possible, for it is rare that it cannot serve to demonstrate indifferently either of two opposed theories, equally coherent and equally plausible. Um, let's see here. Yeah, it definitely is a philosophy of science here. Um, The second name is a simple probability, but since it works on a plane where probability may increase indefinitely, it brings us gradually to a state where practically equivalent to certainty. Between these two ways of philosophizing, I have long since made my choice. I shall be happy if, however, in small degree, I have helped make yours. Bergson is very pleasurable to read. He really is he's really just really nice to read, just like really neat. Anyway, I'm gonna end my stuff on mind energy here, and I'm gonna go on to matter and memory here pretty soon. So, by the way, thank you for those of you who have recently subscribed. I feel like I get like one every couple days or so. So